All right, here we are at another racket stringing hangout. I was going to say live, but it's actually not live. It's being recorded. But anyway, so this is Pat with Racket String Tips, and we have Brad on the other line. And so I just wanted to welcome everybody and just kind of say, hey, if you like this and you find this content valuable and helpful, make sure that you subscribe and like this channel. We have lots more information coming on. And then also you can go to buymeacoffee.com and you can there, support the channel by, throwing a few dollars at that and just, showing the support there that you find this valuable. And also I just started a racket stringing course on there where it's like a monthly fee, but you can just go as long as you want on it, or 1 month if that's all you feel. So then I can analyze your stringing, and then I can help you with that, support you with some live video and also some video analysis and just a lot of email support. So if that's something you're interested, you can find that there too. And I'm always putting more information. I'm just getting that started, so I'm putting a lot of information in there to kind of help support stringers and resources and things that I find every day, when I'm out doing my search for finding out things in the stringing community, because really that's what Racket Stringing Tips is about, is building a community and bringing people together and sharing their ideas and just their stringing knowledge to make the sport even better. So anyways, that's about me. Brad, it's good to see you again.
Yeah, good to see you too. I think that's a great idea what you're doing with the online. I think we've all learned in the last year to 2 years that we can get by in life through Zoom educational seminars and meetings, and so it's a lot. I don't know, maybe we're getting better at it, but I've done a lot of virtual type stuff the last 2 years and learned quite a bit of different different areas of topics and so whatnot. So it's a good idea to do it, and it's helpful, and it saves people time from having to travel somewhere or do this or do that. It's just it's been nice. So
I
good
think
luck.
we've all learned it. I think we've all learned it out of necessity, right? I mean, it's one of
Yeah,
those things that we've learned, and we're like, yeah, I think it's part of everyday life now. And I mean, things are going to continue to change, of course, and of course, some things are better to do live, and some things, the interaction. But yet, we can still function, and we can still be learning stuff, like you're saying, in with this type of a venue. So,
yeah.
hey, here we are. So this is fun. So I think we have some fun stuff to talk about today. I know one of my subscribers asked me to put in the description kind of a timeline of things that we're going to be talking about, because I haven't been doing that in all the videos. And some of these videos are about an hour long, right? So I'm
Yeah.
going to try to go back to all those videos and put timelines in them, so that is more helpful. Like if you're looking for a certain thing that we're talking about that like catches your eye, then you can go straight to it. So I'm gonna try to work on that and get that in there. So I just wanted to let everybody know that that is something that I'm working on. And of course, we are always trying to better ourselves as stringers, right? Because there's a lot of stuff, I admit I don't know a lot of stuff about some of the things. And so I'm always out there looking for more information, and you are as well, right, Brad? That's why we decided to sign up for the European Racket Stringers Association symposium, right? So that we can
Yeah.
learn some more stuff. And this morning, actually, we had our first couple sessions. They were just kind of introing the days ahead and about what we could expect in the different chats and the different instructional periods and so forth. So I think we can talk a little bit about what we found, because there's some things that kind of stood out to me. And again, I know we talk a lot about tennis, but there are other sports that we can definitely maybe be progressing into, like badminton and squash. And I know that
Sure.
market is really big, because they were talking about really that they need stringers at the professional level that can handle squash. I think there's a shortage of that. So knowing that, you go, well, if you're a stringer and you want to be a stringer and you're starting out, or a little bit about tennis, maybe you want to also learn about squash, get yourself started in that area. I think that's maybe an area that I'm going to start learning. Maybe I'll start putting videos up, the newbie stringer in squash. A lot of the principles are the same, though of course there are going to be some nuances that are going to be a little bit different, and there's other tips that you're going to need to know stringing the squash racket. but once you learn stringing and you learn basic principles, I think a lot of that stuff will flow over, right?
Sure. Yeah, I think you're right about that. I want to do the same thing. I have no experience with squash rackets, with badminton, with racquetball. So I'm looking forward to the symposium as well. Now, you and I are both affiliated with the USRSA, the United States Racket Stringers Association. You've been there a long time. I'm kind of new the last year and a half, 2 years. We're both master racket technicians certified through them. Had they had a symposium this weekend, I would have jumped on that as well, just to learn more. It just so happens that the European Racket Stringers Association is having a virtual summit for the next started today. And Mark Maslowski, I believe is his name. He's the president of the European Racket Stringers Association. He's out of, I think he said, Split, Croatia. And so we had a virtual meeting this morning. I guess it was 5 p.m. or so in Europe, Paris time.
Mm-hmm.
So it was, 5 hours earlier for me, I guess. And what was it, 8 hours for you, or 9 hours?
11. Yeah,
Oh,
it's 11 hours
right. You're
difference for
6
me.
hours. Yeah.
Yeah,
11
so,
hours for you. So
yeah.
it was interesting. There was probably 100 to 150 of us
Mm-hmm.
on a Zoom call, kind of listening to Mark and what's in store the next few days from,
Mm-hmm.
I think they've got an official Wimbledon stringer. They've got brand ambassadors, representatives from Luxilon and Dunlop, and
Mm-hmm.
just various topics from racket customization, Swingweight, that Mark did a little demo on that earlier today. So it's kind of interesting, and it's like you said, we just are constantly wanting to learn more and just see what else is out there around the world. So I'm looking forward to to this weekend and seeing what we can learn and then talk about and maybe do another video on after the weekend.
Yeah, exactly. Because when he was talking about balancing and swing weight a little bit, it brought me back because I know he was highlighting some of the machines. He was talking, because that's been something I've been thinking about, like, okay, in the future, when it comes time to maybe purchase a machine like that, right now I know there's a Dunlop machine out there. The Yonex one that's out there is a little bit more expensive. There's Head has a machine as well, and then there's a company that makes the Pro T1 machine, which is in a suitcase. That's designed more for traveling, if you're traveling to tournaments and so forth. It has everything nicely compacted into one. And I thought I saw something similar to that at some of the tournaments I've been at. And so it got me thinking, because a long time ago I used to have an RDC machine, which I wish I still had, and I ended up giving it back. Yeah, it's a long story, but I wish I still had it. But it's kind of a cumbersome, it's a large machine. But the one thing that it had, not only can you check swing weight and racket stiffness and weight and balance, you can also check string bed stiffness, because it has a part where when you put the racket on it, you put something on top of the strings, and then it presses down on the strings, and it gives you I believe that's the dynamic tension versus the static. I think it was the dynamic one, but anyways, so that machine had that component. But RDC machines went through a couple iterations. They had the initial one that was the yellow. It looked exactly like the Star 3 and 4 as far as the coloring, the white with the yellow stripe around it and so forth. So if you had your babolat machine and you put this right next to it, you look like you had like this tech setup. That was really cool, right? 20 years ago. And so that kind of followed it for a while. And then when they came out with the Star 4 and the sensor, that was blue and white, they also made a blue and white edition of it. So if you had the newer stuff, but then after that, they kind of stopped. I haven't, they're hard to get hold of, those machines. I mean, because those things will last for as long as you don't, I mean, you have to kind of be careful in transporting it, because it does have some weighted things in there, as far as that have to be, the components need to be carefully transported. But those things would probably last forever, right? Because you don't use them so much that you wear parts out necessarily. But I haven't seen them around much and stuff. So I think there's been a lot of other companies now that make something that's similar in all areas except the string bed stiffness. And I know that there's I think through Alpha or another company in Europe, there's String Master, that makes a little device that actually will test the string bed stiffness as well. So you get that, and then you get something like this, and then you're all set again.
Yeah.
And so I'm gonna try to put some links in the description or on my membership kind of thing that I have set up. I'll try to put a lot of those links and resources in there so people can get those, because it takes me some time to find all that information. But that's out there. So I thought that was really interesting, because the one thing that I never really thought about was side swing weight.
Right.
And that's what Mark was really talking about this time, is he was measuring the side swing weight, because when you have a racket flat, he had one what do you call it? It measured the weight. He had two of them sitting there, and then he put the racket on top.
He kind of rested it on each
scale.
side on its
Scale.
own
That's
scale.
the word. Yeah, scale.
Right.
I couldn't think of the words. I'm tired. So yeah, there was two scales, right? And then you could see that on one side it was heavier than the other, and so then he was adjusting the side swing weight and so forth. But it was kind of funny, because when he got done with all this, he basically said, you know what? There's a very small percentage of people out there that are even going to be able to tell the difference, right?
Sure.
But it is those people that you're working for when you're, there's a couple companies out there like Priority One and a few others that customize these rackets for a lot of the players. The companies send the rackets when they come straight out of the factory to them, and then they modify them to the specs that the player actually wants. And then when the player gets the racket in their hand, it's already had the modification to that spec that the player wants. So that's true racket customizing, because I know that in the United States Racket Stringers Association, they really only go to a certain point when you're getting your MRT, right? They're just going over basic scenarios that are more designed for the general level stringer.
Yes.
They don't get into replacing as far as from my experience, they don't really get too deep into replacing the pallets, replacing going deep into matching up rackets, where you're really messing with the swing weight and you're adding weight. And they do a little bit of that, but not to the extent from what I've seen the European Racket Stringers Association. And I know, a while back is when they the ERSA separated from the USRSA. I think they wanted to kind of go more technical. They're saying that the US is not quite as technical in some areas, and they've gone more into the professional market and, getting people ready for tournament stringing and stuff like that. Right. So I thought that was kind of cool. I don't know. Did you have any input on that when you saw him doing the demo?
No, I had never seen that done really from start to finish, from weighing the racket, finding where the balance points are off, or the weights are different, and the way he used the little putty just to find out the exact amount he needed to get that balance right. And so I didn't have experience with that. I found it interesting, and it's one of those things where you think a lot until you start really diving into some of these things, like these virtual summits, and you're like, what am I getting into? Where do I want to stop my business? Where's the border to my business? What do I want to do? Do I want to just be the best at tennis racket stringing, or do I want to branch out and learn how to string badminton? Do I want to branch out and learn how to do racquetball or squash? Do I want to get into racket customization other than replacing grommets or building up a grip? And those are the only hands-on things that you really have to do with the USRSA to get your MRT. As they watch you string a racket, they watch you replace grommets, and they watch you build a grip. But they do talk in the questions on the test do get into balance points and being able to really describe that and do some examples of that. But there's not a lot of hands-on, and that's a whole nother level or world of racket I guess customization or racket services. Is, do you want to invest in a $3,000 or $4,000 machine, and how many people are you actually going to get at your local club who are going to spend whatever it might be, $300 to $500 to really get all your rackets to be exactly on the swing weight? Because every racket, if you get 3 of the same exact rackets, at a sports shop, same grip size, same racket, same head size, they're all going to be slightly varied in weight. And
Hmm.
that's the whole thing with racket customizations, and being able to find the one racket that you love the weight of this one racket the most. So
Hmm.
that might be the case, but before you switch, the other two to the one, you've got to try them all to see which one you like the best. And once you find the racket that feels the best in your hand, then you're taking the other two, three, four, or five and saying, hey, you've got to match these four or five to this one. This is the one I like. So I don't think there's a huge market for me here. If I had a customer who wanted something like that, I would probably say, talk to Roman down in New York City, right? He's the one,
Hmm.
he's probably the closest one to me that does that. And so
Yeah,
that's,
I mean, that's a good point. And I was thinking, like, for some people that would be a little bit too much of what they're really wanting to do. However, it's good to know the basis of why they do what they do,
yes,
and the reasonings behind it. Because just in the fact that, like, they're talking about the Yonex machine versus the other ones out there, and they're going, well, they use a different measure for the Yonex, so really that one you wouldn't even maybe use on tour because it's going to give you a different number. It's going to give you a different reference number, and so maybe in a shop that would be good. And so just knowing that kind of stuff, just knowing the technology and how it's different, and
sure,
what the purpose of it is and where you would use it. Because really, if you get a balance board, if you get a simple balance board, maybe get that Pro T1 suitcase. That's about a 1100 versus the 3000, right? So
okay,
you maybe get that, or maybe actually just start with a balance board, and then maybe go to the Stringway, get the Stringway system that actually I think has the balance part built into it, and then also the string stiffness. That's like a couple hundred, I think it's $200-300 or something like that. So you can get started in customizing at that level
yes,
and see where that takes you, because at least then you can find the balance point of the racket a lot easier. I mean, you can do that without and you can even do it without buying the $40 balance board. You can make your own balance point
yeah,
and
with a
measure.
pencil or whatever,
Exactly, right. And then the swing weight, there's actually on some boards online, you can read, people have made for $10-15, they've made their own swing weight system so
Hmm,
that you can measure your own swing weight. I might review that sometime, where you can have your own mechanism for that. And I think it also uses the phone. I think there's an app that you use on your phone with the little system that you make that hold the racket so that it can do the swing. And then the iPhone will, the app will give you the number that you need. So a lot of that stuff nowadays you can do pretty much on the cheap, right? Without
yeah,
the DIY, right? Do it yourself kind of approach versus going out and buying those machines and stuff. And
right,
but it just gives you a little bit further so that you can at least talk it through and understand what the purpose of it is and where it has its use and so forth. And then maybe down the road, you go into that market, or maybe you just never do. But at least it's a good intro, right? Because for some of the stuff, I haven't, just to be able to hear somebody go over the reviews of all these machines, because some of them you might not ever see.
right. I think what he mentioned was, and I wrote it down. I don't have it with me now, but I think he said the majority of his ERS, European Racket Stringer Association members that have these types of machines all have more than any other. I think he said they have the head machine. And do you remember what name that was? What head machine that was?
Um, well, there was a Dunlop one too. The
Right.
Dunlop
I remember
chromatic
he made a comment that I think more of his members have this
had
head
the head.
machine,
Yeah, yeah,
but anyway, that's,
yeah.
but like you said, it's good to, I want to have a basic understanding of it, and,
Hmm.
have been able to watch a demo, see how it's done, I think is important and stuff. On a different topic quickly, it's Black Friday here today.
Oh, right.
Right in the US, Black
Yeah, yeah.
Friday, the biggest shopping day of the year. So I was looking for some string
Oh,
specials
yeah,
today,
yeah, yeah.
and I got a few emails, buy two reels, get one free. I think Ytex was doing that, but Gamma also had the same thing today, buy two, get one free. And so I like the Gamma Glide, which is that, cross string
Hmm.
for topspin. and of course they were sold out. So I was going to buy 2 and get 1 free, but they were sold out. So
yeah,
you do
so
anything
that's a
today?
good point. You should, like, if you I'm gonna post this later, and by that time, I don't know if it's gonna be nighttime for most people, but I think the Black Friday sales are probably extended through the
I
weekend
think
on
so. Yeah.
a lot of websites. But yeah, I would definitely, if you are looking at getting some more string, or you're looking to add to your current inventory, this would be a good time to look. I mean, look
Yeah.
on some of the retailers, even like Tennis Warehouse, Fromith, uh,
Tennis Express,
Tennis Express. I think there's Do It Tennis. There's a few other ones online as
Midwest
well.
Sports, right?
Midwest Sports. Look at those, and some of the other ones, I think, as well, that sell string directly to you, would be giving you the sales right now that could save you a little bit of money, for sure.
Yeah, right.
That's a good point. I didn't really, I'm actually looking at Black Friday sales for something else, so I've been doing that, but I haven't even really got into the looking at the strings too much. I have been looking on those string sites,
Well, I
websites.
remember they have end of the year sales too. So if you miss the
Yep.
Black Friday, just hold tight, because within another month there'll be some more specials. So
Yeah, because we talk. I think I'd mentioned once before about closeouts. I don't really look at closeouts very much, because I don't want a string that is going to be closed out, and I don't want
right.
to, because you're not going to be really. I mean, if you just need some strings to have in case you're stringing for free, or you're giving them away, or you want to have a really budget string, then that's not a bad move. But I think to stock up, I don't do that with closeout strings.
No, I don't either, because you get one of your clients who loves it, and you're like, oh, sorry, by the way, I can't ever get it again. So
Yeah, yeah.
right.
And I think I guess we're kind of done with the swing weight testing machines and all that. But the one thing that I totally didn't even think about is the temperature of the rackets, right? Because you could get different numbers if the rackets are completely cold and it's a different environment than others. So you really always have to keep that in the mind too. The the temperature, and there's just so many things, right? And string too.
Well,
Like, what about the
yeah.
string? Because string weighs different things as well, and grips and stuff. So
Well, yeah,
all
you
that
wrap
kind of
a
stuff.
grip on it, it finishes on one side, so
Mhm.
how much is, I
Right.
mean, they're dealing with very minute
Mhm.
measurements of weight. So, if
Yeah.
this final wraparound on the overgrip comes over now on the left side of the frame, it's like, well, that's adding a tiny, tiny bit more weight. So
Yep, exactly.
I'm
So,
I'm glad, I personally, I never really was too finicky over things like that, which is probably a good thing. I know, when I would go, and I've mentioned this before, that I used to spend some time hitting with Venus and Serena, and when we would start the year in December, after a few weeks they'd have off the end of November. When I'd show up at the house for the first few days, we would use balls that had been outside overnight. They were damp in the morning. They'd use rackets that were laying outside. I mean, so it's good to not really have to have everything too perfect, because then when you show up and things are a little bit off, it's really going to throw you off. But
yeah,
so I
yeah.
try not to get too crazed about it, and I just make adjustments with my body. It's like, I remember Steve McCurry, the famous photographer for National Geographic, when they ask him, "How do you deal with not having a zoom lens?" He's like, "My legs are my zoom lens. If I need it closer, I move up to my subject. If I need it further away, I move back." It's easier,
Exactly, right.
you know what I mean? It's easier with one lens. It doesn't, but anyway.
Yeah, that's kinda interesting. Uh, I've been thinking a little bit lately too about weaving, crosses, and the importance of that. And, like, I always, focus on the idea that that's where a lot of mistakes are made, right? In when you're weaving the crosses,
Sure.
and the idea of always weaving one cross ahead, I always just thought as a natural thing. And so I always, sometimes I forget to even mention that, but it's for a lot of people, they don't even think about, like, why would you weave one cross ahead before you pull?
Right.
And, well, of course, we know that the reason that you do that is because it reduces the friction on the strings as you're pulling,
Sure.
because
More
basically
space.
it makes it easier when you're weaving in there. It gives you more space, and it just because one thing that's a place where you lose tension as well, right? Because when you pull across, it's not like pulling a main with your machine, because the mains don't have any other pull against it, and so you're basically pulling a string straight for tension. But when you're pulling across, you're pulling this cross string across a bunch of main strings, and so there's a little bit more friction, there's a little bit more pull. And so
Sure.
if you just pull the string and then clamp right away, you could potentially be missing a little bit of pull. So some feel that the theory about letting it sit a few seconds before you clamp on the cross is a good idea. Just letting it, stabilize so that you get all of that tension out. And also, we have basically 3 core string types, right? We have the synthetic monofilaments. We have, 4 kinds. We have the
multi-filaments.
we have multifilaments. We have the mono and other synthetics, putting those in some group, because some people say that the synthetic is not always a true mono, because a mono meaning one, but it has wraps around it. So, but anyways, other synthetics outside of the multifilaments is one group. Then you have the multifilaments, then you have the poly and the copolys, and then you have the natural gut. So really you have 4 different kinds of string that you need to learn how to weave, right? And actually, if you approach them, a lot of times we approach them all the same way, right? But actually, if you approach them all a little bit different, I think that is a tip that could maybe get you a lot further. And what I mean is, when you're stringing natural gut, you have to take care a little bit different than you do with the other strings. One thing that you got to be careful, just off the top, one thing that you have to be careful with natural gut is that you don't keep twisting it. Because when you pull strings across the string bed, they tend to sometimes twist.
Yes.
You don't even notice it for most of them, because it doesn't matter for most of the strings. Well, to some degree, right? And so it subtly starts to do that from every pull. So if you start the crosses at the top, let's say with natural gut, and you just pull and weave like you normally would, by the time you get about halfway through the racket, your string starts to want to naturally coil up, because it's been turning and stuff. If you're not careful, it's not supposed to, but if you're careful, and then you start thinking it, because then you're trying to unwrap, then you're trying to letting it kind of uncoil, while you're continuing to string, and then it's harder, and then that's where you start kinking it, and then by the time you get to the bottom, the string just wants to go this direction, and you're trying to get it, uncoil it or whatever. So that's a problem that you have naturally if you don't have a lot of experience with gut. It just happens. And so approaching weaving differently for gut versus weaving for a poly based string or a multifilament, those are all different, right? I would say the easiest, of course, is just regular synthetics. Then it would be multifilaments, and then polys, and then natural gut. I mean, that's because I've strung a lot of natural gut. So for me, natural gut is the easiest, but for a lot of people, it's the hardest.
I strung natural gut last night. I put it in my frame, and I got to do one again today. I'll probably do one tonight, natural gut, and it's the most sensitive out there, probably.
Right. And so if, for me, the polys were always the hardest to push through if you are pushing string through, like meaning that you're starting and you're going with the finger up and above, you're going out. Those were always the hardest. So really using the pull method, or like the Japanese method, and or the pull method, pulling them towards you is the better, with the loop and all that, and then you pull them through is really the better. And that's one I have to maybe get a little bit better at, because I haven't had as much because I don't usually use that, because I usually go to my know-how. When it comes down to it, you just go to what feels comfortable and is easier for you, right? And
I know, as you get to the bottom of the frame and you've got the last few crosses to do, that's where you can really start to see more coil. So that's where the pulling through becomes better. So even if you do the top half with the push and the, you know what I mean? As you get toward the bottom, you kind of pull through.
Because by the time you get to that point too, a lot of times that's when your gut starts to uncoil once you get to the bottom, right? And it really shouldn't. I mean, if you really do it 100% effectively, the bottom should look just like the top and shouldn't look all, it should look just as clear and, you know, as strong at the bottom as it does at the top, right?
So I strung my gut at 40 pounds.
Oh man, that's low.
I string it low. I just teach tennis now, and I just want the most comfortable string and tension in my racket. So, but anyway, so my dad was over, and I was showing him my new Bayardo. He was over for Thanksgiving last night, and it was quite fun because we were talking about, you know, the first machine that he ever bought, you know, which was that $100, I think it was a Clipper or something, you know, 35 years ago. And then he was reminding me how, you know, we had a relative who had passed away and left a few $1,000, and we took 1,000 of that and bought that Echelon machine that I used for 25 years and brought to the satellites when I was on satellites and stuff. And we just gave that to another teaching pro about a year ago who strings a little bit. And then I got this machine, so it was kind of neat. But after I strung it at 40 pounds, I said, Dad, let me show you this app. We use these, you know, tension gauges just to kind of monitor tension loss. And I said, I just downloaded an app that's, you know, you kind of tap the strings, you put in the string measurements from the 16 mains, 19 crosses, the head size, the type of string you put in, and then you tap the strings with whatever, a pencil, back of scissors, and it listens. The phone listens to the sound, the pitch. And so I said, I strung this at 40. Let's see what this tension app reads it at. And it came out at 39.8 pounds. So I thought that was pretty neat. You know, I strung it at 40 and the tension app said, this sounds like 39.8.
That's interesting because usually they just use it as a reference tension, not for like the actual tension that it comes out on the machine. But number one is it could be because you use gut and you use it at a low tension. But which app is it that you use?
Let me look at it here.
I want to look that one up because I know there's multiple ones. But
there's a few YouTube videos on it. Nothing great. It's called Tennis Tension. Tennis Tension. It's a purple app with a white top of a white tennis racket and a white tennis ball.
Okay, I'll look at it. Is it one that costs money or is it?
I think if it did, it was like a one-time like $5 fee, but I don't remember if I paid a few dollars. It wasn't much.
And have you put that up against like your like little tension kind of?
Yeah, meter? My let me show you this one right here. The string meter, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, the string meter. So the string meter came in at like 43.3. Or no, I'm sorry. The string meter came at like 43.
Okay.
So this came at 39.8, the app. The strings meter said it was 43. I strung it at 40 pounds. But they're both, you know, I'm not using either one of them to tell me what the tension is.
Of course.
I'm using them just to tell me what the tension loss is. So when I check the next day, now every time I string a poly lately, and I don't string a lot of different polys, it's either, you know, Head Hawk Touch or Solenko Hyper G, Yonex Poly Tour Pro. But they all, if I string it and it reads at 64 pounds, come the next morning, it hasn't been played with, it'll be down to like 62 pounds. You know, poly's just constantly losing tension. And that's why they said, like Federer, I watched an interview today, he said he strings 600 to 800 rackets a year. You know, and he goes through about 50 rackets a year.
Yeah, 50 frames, right. And frames. that's the whole thing. And what you're saying there is because you know, polyester string loses the most tension of any string out there. And so you could potentially be losing 30 to 40% once it's all you know, equalizes. And natural gut, of course, holds the best tension. And that's why it's like, if you really need a comfortable string and you need one to perform well, you should be looking at natural gut to some degree. You know, you don't have to maybe go with a full bed of that, because for some people they're like, well, I want something that's a little crisper, or I want something that maybe isn't quite so lively well then, hybrid it with a synthetic, even like a
Right.
Prince Duraflex or
Sure.
just a basic $5 synthetic string
Mhm.
in the crosses, to kind of tame that natural gut a little bit. But I think that's an approach that some people probably really kind of get away from natural gut because of the cost. And I was looking at this because I was going to do a video on some natural gut, and you can actually get put together natural gut hybrids for under $20 a set. There's a few out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Well,
so I'm gonna.
what is this one here? This
I mean,
is
I'll tell you, Vocal is one of them that's on sale. I think you can get a set of Vocal. The Klip, right? That's the second one. This is a Klip.
half set is
Yep.
$20 for about a
Yep.
half set is $20.
Yeah, and I think it was even a little bit less because I know the Vocal for half a set ends up being about $17, and then you can put some synthetic with that, and you'd have your $20. And I
Wow.
think the Klip was even a little bit less. I think it was 35 for a set.
Yeah, you're probably
Um,
right.
and so it brings it down even a little bit more. I mean, babolat, you're not going to be able to touch that even with the tonic, which is their lower grade gut, right?
Well, there's
Um,
guys on eBay selling natural gut for fairly low too. You
yeah,
might be able
and
to find them for
you
15,
might
16
start with
bucks.
that. Yeah, you might start with that because at least that way you're getting into that. You're at least in the ballpark. And
Yeah.
you're using that because if you've never tried it, I would definitely suggest giving it a shot. But of course, find somebody who's had some experience stringing gut because otherwise they're going to mess it up as quick as
I'm
they
looking
put it in.
forward. I'm looking forward to the presentation on natural gut this weekend.
Yeah, I want to see what they're talking about that I haven't even thought about. There's probably a few things that might come out of that.
And also a Kirschbaum, I guess Sandra Kirschbaum,
Mhm.
whose family owns Kirschbaum Strings. She's doing a presentation. So
Yeah,
that'll be interesting. And then Luxilon's going to have one. So we'll hear some neat stuff this weekend, hopefully.
right. And one thing that I haven't been able to get away from is this sergetti stringing stuff, right? I
Yeah.
keep getting people talking about it because I'm working on writing this article that I want to put in my site but it's just there's so many different methods, right? There's about 6 different ways of stringing, and then proportional stringing is one thing in general, but then the sergetti is a whole different. They go beyond just calling it a proportional stringing system because they claim that they have this algorithm which is beyond the norm of taking the string by its length and then using the mathematical formula and figuring out what tension you need to string it at. They're saying it's beyond that, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of people who use it and pay the money, like I think you've talked about it before too, that you've tried it, right? You've tried it.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
paid 20 bucks. I
Yeah.
paid to
Yeah.
get my, I mean,
Right.
imagine if you get 100,000 people around the world paying 20
Right,
bucks.
because otherwise, if their system isn't any better, then why would you just go? I mean, there's a couple websites you can go to where they just give you a little calculator, you put in your string lengths and so forth, and then it gives you these numbers. But Sergetti apparently takes into consideration your frame. It
Right.
takes into consideration what type of strings you are wanting to use, and then they use all of those numbers as well to create. I'm not trying to do an ad for Sergetti because I have nothing to do with them and I don't know much about the algorithm that they use, and I'll never know what their algorithm is, right? But
Well, some
apparently it's
people
supposed
love
to be
it.
different.
Right.
Yeah,
You're
I've had some
gonna hear
people just
both
say,
things about it. Some people say it's like a witch doctor, so
yeah,
so you'll hear everything about it. So
yeah,
I
but
just wanted to try it.
all of this proportional, either you're going to be on that bandwagon or you're not, right? And I think it comes down to really one thing. It comes down to the idea, do you think that racket string equalizes in your racket or not? I guess the USRSA's take on that is they feel that the tension doesn't equalize, because otherwise, if you feel that after a while tension equalizes in your racket, then all of these theories of proportional stringing would be meaningless, right?
Right.
So either you feel like tension equalizes or it doesn't. I mean, to some degree, we're all going to be losing a little bit of tension on knots if it's not done right, right? You lose tension on a knot. You can check that really quickly. Sometimes when you're weaving those crosses, you might lose a little bit of tension. because you just aren't pulling everything out of it, and then it just doesn't get as tight as it needs to hit the tension. But what they're talking about is, if I change up the tension in all of my strings to a certain degree, is it going to stay within that uniformly and create a better effect overall? And the people behind that proportional stringing in general claim that. And I guess, you either believe that or you don't, and there's some ways that you can measure it, but that's the one thing I think it comes down to.
Yes. Yeah, I think you're right. And it just, for me personally, the end string where you tie the knot is fairly insignificant, but you don't want, and the USRSA recommends not tensioning that any tighter because of the tension loss from the knot. They're saying that because it's a shorter length, right, it's going to equal out. But they're also saying if you hit the ball that close to the frame, a looser tension is going to be more forgiving and it's going to work better for you. So instead of trying to make that end string super tight, you're better off not doing anything with it. But no stringer wants to hand a racket back to their customer, because which string do they pull? They pull on the end string first. And if it moves, if it moves a ton, they're going to look at you like, what the hell's going on here?
Yeah. And that brings me to a good point, because when I first got started stringing, and I would string around the world, where you would actually have one string on the bottom, one cross on the bottom before you come back up, right, to string the rest of them. I would actually string that one string a little bit tighter, because I wanted to make sure it was not loose, because that's always the one that people are messing with, flicking when they're checking to see if you know how to string or not, right? And so I wanted to make sure that one wasn't loose. And then of course, if it's on the way down and it's the last string, then you're like, I got to make sure that this knot, so I'm going to make sure I pull my 10% more for the tying knot. And
certain strings you're gonna you could break it. I've pulled knots, like I have this one's, I don't know if I have it here. Yeah, this. You ever use this monogut ZX Pro?
No, I haven't used it, but I've heard of it, but I haven't used it.
Ashway, if you pull that too, I've broken the knot just pulling it too tight, just trying to get it tight. So you have to be, this is a string that you have to be very careful with. Some strings, you can use a little bit more tension, but that's a real sensitive string. So
knowing that, so that's a string that if you have a racket that has compromised grommets or has a lot of sharp corners, you've got to really be aware of what you're doing.
Completely.
You know what? Here's a tip I don't think we've ever talked about. It's a real short one, so we won't have to go into like lengthy detail on it. But I don't know if you've ever strung a racket that's new, where the grommets are new. They haven't seated, they haven't set in yet, and you damage the frame because the strings that you're pulling through end up touching the frame, and because they pull the grommets out because you didn't hold the grommets when you pull the string. How many times have you seen that happen, or maybe done it yourself?
Yeah, it's happened to me. Sure.
And once you do that, you basically damage the frame, because there's no way, because once you stick the grommet back in there, it's gonna tend to move the direction that the pressure is once it's strung, right? So the gap between the strings might be a little bit less or more, based on, because now it's no longer having the frame to deflect. I mean, it kind of moves over because you damaged the frame, right?
Yeah.
And so basically, when you're stringing a new racket, here's the tip, I guess. When you're stringing a frame that is new and has not been strung, when you are stringing around a corner or an area where the grommets could just kind of go back into the frame, where the string could accidentally touch the frame, you want to just hold that with your thumb with your other hand, on a constant pull machine, so that it keeps the grommets tightly in there while you are pulling the string. And then you can kind of see, then follow the string, with your eyes as you're pulling, to make sure that, the grommets are staying put, because otherwise, you would have to just stop the machine, release it and try again before it damages it. But you got to watch around the corners. It's usually toward the bottom, right around 5 and 7 o'clock. It might also happen at the head, but usually I think it's the throat where I have had maybe that being an issue. So that's a tip. So when you're stringing a brand new frame, be aware of where the grommets are and the movement of the grommets when you're stringing.
Yes. Even zip ties, even if you have zip ties, sometimes
Yeah.
when you're putting it on a bumper guard or whatever, sometimes just having zip ties handy
Yep,
just to keep
especially towards the ends of the head guard, because some head
right.
guards just will not stay inside.
Yeah, you get a bucket of 300 zip ties for, $7, $8, and
Hey,
yeah,
that's a good.
they
You know
come in
what? I
handy.
didn't even have that down. I'm going to put that down. The zip tie tip. But yeah, that's a good one. Um, I think we've
Zip
given a
ties,
couple of good.
they help a lot. I ride bikes a lot, and there's always someone in a group who, anyone got a zip tie, a piece will part will be dangling or whatever. So
Yeah,
yeah, but
yeah,
they
yeah.
they come in handy.
Um, so yeah, so I'm looking forward to like learning some more things about squash and work on my weaving technique a little bit, since there are taking into consideration what type of string you're stringing. I think that's just another thing that will get you at a higher level of the stringer. I did put my machine together finally. I did a video on it. I haven't put it on the site yet. It's just a short little video about my basically putting it together. But I did find that I thought I could do this thing pretty much by myself. But yeah, no, I needed a couple other. I had my wife and my son help me put the machine
Yeah,
actually on the stand, because not only does the stand weigh 50 pounds, the machine weighs 110.
tell me
So I'm
about it.
I'm kind of thinking like this is probably not this machine that you would take. I mean, this is a machine that is used at tournaments, but this is not the one that you're going to use if you want to string out of a hotel room for players at a tournament. That's why those Babolat Star 4s were just, I mean, that was just, I don't know why
Yeah,
anybody had really created a machine that would work as well and is a tournament grade machine. I haven't seen a lot out there that would maybe replace the Star 4. I mean, I know like even Priority 1, which is the stringer for Federer, for the most part of stringing on tour, they would always use the Babolat Star 4s. And I think he recently retired it. I'm not sure. But so I'm just wondering, what would be a good replacement, because you don't want a heavy machine that weighs 120 pounds,
no way.
you know?
No, because you got to bring it on an airplane too. These guys are flying all over the world.
Yeah, and then just the ease of moving it around and stuff. When I used to have my Star 3, that thing was light, and the Star 4 is a little bit heavier, but that was more that made more sense, right? If you're putting it, in a hotel room and stuff and stringing, or you need to move the machine around a lot, even if you're going to string at a college or a tournament or whatever, moving a heavy machine around is just
Not
not the
fun.
best thing to do. So yeah, there's got to be I mean, I know, there's some of those machine options like Gamma. These aren't maybe tournament grade in the sense that what we see at tournaments, but they still are decent machines. Some of the upper level Gamma machines are decent, and they have a tabletop one. And I think what is it, Pro Tennis or Pro? I don't know. There's a few other ones which are computerized that you can sit down and they're not as heavy. Um, I guess
All
it
right.
just comes down to kind of not sure if I want to buy one if I just for using at a tournament, but I
I
don't I
know.
don't do enough of that right now that would make it make sense. And if it's a big enough tournament, they're already going to have the machine set up, and whatever team that you're working for, whether it's Yonex or Head or Technifiber or Wilson, depending on where you're at, they're going to have all that set up. But if it,
Hmm.
yeah, but yeah, I was just thinking of that when I was putting the machine together, going, man, this thing's kind of heavy. So
It sure is. Put those
suckers,
movers on the under the feet. Put the
yeah,
sliders.
I know, because I'm going to be moving it a little bit around, I think, but I'm gonna
Comes
have
in
to.
handy.
That's my next, I guess my next thing to do. But so I'll start doing some stringing videos with that and stuff. But yeah. So I don't know. I don't really have anything else per se for today, because uh, we were working on some of those other things, and listening to a couple hours of the symposium this morning.
Yep.
Um,
You're doing
but
that tomorrow again.
yeah,
I'll be on at 6:30 in the morning Eastern time for the stringing software. And then I'll be on the tennis court at 9, so I'll have to watch a few of those later on recording. But Yeah, it'll be fun to see what we can learn this weekend, and then we'll have to talk about kind of as we finish up the year here. You know, what are our goals for next year? You know, with our stringing, with your channel,
Mhm.
with you know, just kind of a recap on this year and moving forward.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, that would be awesome because we have, we have a couple more shows that we could get in this year, so no doubt. And then definitely talking about next year because there's definitely some goals that I have, and like you also mentioned some things that you want to do in tennis and stringing, and we're always trying to get better, and we're trying to build that community to get other people to be better at this as well. And so join us in our journey here. And Brad's been enjoying this. I've been enjoying getting together. We've been doing this weekly now. I mean, since we started it, and
Yeah,
so it's been kind of fun. Hopefully, we can keep that going for a while. And we're kind of flexible a little bit. I mean, we have to work it out, the time zone, but otherwise, I think it's been kind of fun.
entertaining for us, if no one
Yeah,
else, right?
yeah, no kidding, right? Yeah, it's been entertaining, and I've learned some stuff, and
Yeah.
it's just sometimes you find out some things, and sometimes I'll find out some things, and then just being able to share it with other people. It's easier when we're doing it in a conversational way rather than just me talking to the camera sometimes, because not everything comes to you at that time, right?
Yeah. What kind of tennis environment is kind of in your hometown where you are? Is there tennis clubs or is there
Yeah,
outdoor?
they're basically it's an island, right? And so population wise, it's not that large. Maui's not that large, but we have basically three areas where there's a little bit of tennis. A couple of them are in the resort areas, kind of separated in the resort areas, and then a couple other communities have some public tennis court kind of club, where it's a quasi club atmosphere versus and public courts along with it. But we don't actually have tons of courts like other places. We have, because sometimes they disappear and turn into condos or vacation homes or whatever it is. So a couple of the clubs have over the years have left on that, but there are a couple clubs. They're private. They're not too expensive if you want to join, but we do not even have a standalone tennis shop on the island. So
So who does
that
the
kind of
stringing? The pro shops? The pro shops
yeah,
at
it
the club
happens.
or
It
something?
happens. It happens at the pro shops. A couple independent people, like that's kind of what I do
Yeah.
occasionally as well. Is with the stringing on the side like that, and so I have you have your own clients and so forth. There's a few people I think that maybe do that. Sometimes it's a string. It's a coach as well, right? That does
Hmm.
that. But generally, it's just at the clubs. So I think there's probably 4 places that I know of that maybe do stringing.
Do
Um,
they have any pro tournaments in on the islands of Hawaii? They
well, you
used to
know
have a
what?
challenger.
We used to have a challenger that was taken away, and Oahu still has, which is another island, not too far. It's the populated island that has that one actually has, I think, some small, maybe a challenger in the smaller tournament, pro tournament. But we don't have anything that's pro anymore here on the island, as far as I know now, especially with COVID and all that, right? That's kind of went away. But we do have a celebrity one. I think they used to, it was it's one of those, they bring over a couple old stars, like from that no longer are professionals and play, and then it's like a fantasy camp kind of thing, and then you could play
Sure.
with the pros and stuff. And I know Lindsay Davenport and the Bryan brothers have done it in the past, and a few other people. I think Stefan Edberg even did it one year. I wasn't part of it at that time, and I was like, oh boy, it would have been great to see him. But so they've had different people through the years, maybe Vilander. I'm not sure if he ever came, but different folks like that. And then they would you would have, join this, and then you get to hit with them and just kind of have a fun weekend or whatever. So they
Yeah.
consider
I used to love watching Edberg play. He
yeah.
had that
Oh
boy,
yeah,
that's
man.
serve and
That
volley.
was one guy that, yeah, I used to love watching.
I think he had the distinction
Classy.
of what? Winning the junior US Open and the
Yep.
men's US Open.
Yeah, and he was very, classy player, and just that style of serve and volley, which you just don't see like you do nowadays, right?
Right.
Everybody's pretty much a hard baseline hitter, and you
Yeah.
don't see the serve and volley quite like like him. I mean, he would
So
go up on
constantly.
every point pretty much, right? And it was
Yeah,
just, it was fun to watch and stuff. But yeah, I think
it sure was.
my battery's getting low here. I'm gonna probably need to call it a day.
Yep.
But yeah, we'll see you next week, or we'll see you on the symposium, and I'll get this video posted, and I'll see you sometime soon.
Sounds good. Thanks, Patrick.
All right, thanks, Brad. Have a good day.
Yeah.